All right, well, welcome back to Mixed Reviews.
Is that what this show's called?
Yeah,
It's been so long.
it has been way too long. I mean, not for well, I guess our audience has just caught our hiatus as we've been working.
Yeah.
Now that Asha's back, we decided we get Asha to pick the movie for us.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say this week we were watching, but I actually don't know. We gave Asha a list of movies that we picked through and decided, oh, that would be fun for a podcast of ones we've seen, ones we haven't seen. What'd you think of our list?
I thought it was silly. No hate.
Why do you think our list was silly?
No hate. I thought your list was silly because I don't know, it's weird. When you said like a list of movies, I thought it would all be like similar-ish movies. I don't know, you're all over the place. But yeah, like the Lego movie, what?
So what are we watching?
We're gonna watch well, I'm having second. No, it's fine. We're gonna watch drum roll, please. Okay, great. We're gonna watch The Secret Life of Walter and Mitty because it's my favorite movie. So
It's a good one.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen Secret Life of Walter and Mitty?
How many times are you gonna ask me if I've seen Secret Life? And I will
wait,
always
you've never seen it?
no.
Wow.
Well, I guess we have a movie to watch now.
Yeah. This was the first movie I watched with Asha, so
That is true. It's like my top 5. In my top 5. It's not my favorite. My favorite is Bad Trip.
You literally just said it was your favorite movie.
On the list.
And then
it's
you
my
went on to
favorite
say,
on the
wait,
list.
wait,
It's
you
my
went
favorite on the list. It's not my favorite of all time. Favorite on the list, okay?
We literally have the receipt of you saying it's my favorite movie of all time.
I never said that. Do not edit my voice and say
you
that.
you missed Asha saying, correcting and saying that her favorite movie was Bad Trip.
And then my second one is The
to
Truman
me,
Show.
the flip
Yikes.
of that is quite bizarre.
Bad Trip is hilarious.
It's a
It's
good
like
movie.
top-notch comedy.
Let's watch this movie. Let's go watch.
Let's watch Asha's third favorite movie.
Well, I don't know about that. Top 5 for sure. Top 5 for sure, okay?
It's not numbered, but it's in the top 5.
Yeah, top 5 for sure.
Okay.
It doesn't have a place in the top 5, but
It's
it's
just
there.
there.
It's in
It's
the
just
top
floating
5?
around.
Oh, okay.
We don't know. We don't know where he sits, but top 5. Good movie.
All right. If you love me like a lighthouse, get me caught in the rain. If you like. I realize I don't know the words to the Pina Colada song. I also don't think I've actually played those entire credits before, so I didn't know the Pina Colada song was at the end.
It's a cover.
Well, what a movie! What a movie!
Yeah.
I see why that's Asha's top
Something.
5th,
5 in my top 5.
Within the top 5,
Within
but
the
not
top
numbered.
5.
but it's not numbered. It's just somewhere in there.
It's between 3 and 5 probably.
Well, what are the what are the other 5?
I haven't really thought about it.
Oh, it's
but it's definitely
so you really
it's-
don't have a top 5. It's
well,
just,
okay.
it's in there somewhere.
Godfather is probably up there.
Okay.
What is it? What is that thing where there's the balloon people? No, they're not balloon. They're just red. Scissors?
Oh, Us?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's in your top 5?
Probably.
Because you're not assigning any numbers. It's just funny.
Well, because I don't know. But then, like, also,
It's in your top 5, but you didn't know the name of it. And you called them balloony people with scissors.
okay, well, you're
What?
making me think on the spot. You know what? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is really good.
Which one?
There's multiple. Or Rudolph. You know the Rudolph one that's like animated. They're
Yeah.
all fuzzy
Yep.
and made of felt.
So that's 5, not 6.
Yeah, I'm at like 7 at this point.
And you judge us for our list?
You had like, okay, Sonic the Hedgehog, the Lego movie.
They're not because they're amazing movies, because they were interested in talking about them and
Mm,
focusing on. Anyways,
yeah, yeah.
this is a serious podcast.
The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Tom,
Yo.
what's your thoughts?
What's your thoughts, Tom?
When did this movie come out? Can you tell me?
2014, I think.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong. I should look it up while you're talking.
Well, for starters, I really did enjoy this movie.
I figured you would.
It genuinely feels to me though like it's well, I can't really speak for many movies from 2014, but I remember when I was around that age, like in high school and stuff, like all the movies to me felt the same, where it's like meant to be super inspirational, meant to be like movies that you go and you come out feeling like a different human being after watching. Like that is this movie. That being said, this movie is like one of the best of those movies I think I've ever seen, and maybe it's because I'm older now. Maybe it's like I have lived a few lives and I can relate to Walter Mitty a bit more than I could have like if I were younger. It really wants you to discover who you are as a person, figure out your dreams and live your dreams kind of thing. And I think it did it in a way where I was just like not wanting to hit my head against a wall. It was like, oh my gosh, like he's in Iceland and like Major Tom is now playing by this girl he has a huge crush on. And I'm like, I actually like this moment. Like this is a very cool moment where it's like empowering him to not daydream.
Like to step out of the daydream and actually do it.
And do it, yeah. And
she fades away.
Yeah, exactly. Up until that point, he daydreams and it takes him out of life. But now his daydream at that moment pushes him into an actual real decision.
It didn't take him out of it this time.
No. My overall thought, I guess, is it was a very nice movie to watch. It made me feel good.
It's a feel-good movie that is just a well-made feel-good movie.
Yeah, Hundo P.
Hundo P. What year was it made, Asha?
Christmas 2013.
Oh, that's a lot newer than I thought.
You're old man. That's why you get Walter Mitty.
Yeah.
You just relate to him so much because you're just so wise.
No, honestly, like the losing my job, like the girl going back to her little boyfriend and breaking his heart. I relate to that. You've been trying to get me to watch this movie for a long time.
Yeah, I talk about my favorite films, and every time I think about those films, I'd think it reminds me of the movies that made me really enjoy filmmaking and want to learn how to filmmaking. This is what I always say is the one that really actually caught my eye, and we go, oh, films are really cool. This was the film that I remember having that moment where I said, okay, yeah, I really want to do this. Because just watching this movie and seeing that person who daydreams, of course, I have ADHD, of course, I'm that person that daydreams. But as a kid, I always loved getting out of my own head in just a mundane moment and imagining the coolest thing. And being able to see a film where film is taking life and making it this cool thing inside of itself, you see this guy that's imagining these film-like moments. There's just a really cool like interpretation of life.
So this is the movie that made you want to do what you do now.
Yeah.
Really? Why?
I think just seeing, like, being able to relate to a character and see that, and then also just how well that story was told on film. I just felt like I would have never thought to explain the way I think and the way I dream about things. I wouldn't be able to put that on screen like that. It's just something about that clicked, and I went, that's really cool how storytelling can be like these daydreams I have. And I just really enjoyed just how real it all felt. And that, like, this movie, the daydreams and everything, as wild as it can be, and the fact that he goes to Iceland and does all these things, how real they shot it all and how practical it all was, it just makes it feel so well made and so real. I love that about this movie.
Well, I guess we could go into that, the practicality of how they actually shot the film. We have it on Blu-ray. We watched it on Blu-ray, and we watched all the little behind the scenes. They actually traveled across the world to do most of these shots, you know. So they spent most of the time in Iceland shooting all these cliffs and hills and mountains that you see in the film in Iceland, doing their own thing. And it's like, that's a part of filmmaking that you don't see a lot nowadays. You know, a lot of it is on green screen. And then Adam Scott, one of the guys in the thing, goes on and says about a specific series of shots where he's skateboarding down the things. He's like, this would have been way cheaper and way easier to do on green screen, but Ben insisted on strapping himself into a truck to get these shots on the real road in Iceland because it makes it feel way more real.
Yeah.
And that's, I think we were having this conversation the other day about how filmmaking is very annoying to shoot when you're doing just VFX in a green screen room.
Yeah.
And watching all this on film without really understanding how they did it to begin with just really does make it way more immersive as an audience member. Watching this actual guy do this actual stunt on an actual skateboard in the actual country that they're shooting it in, it just has like that sense of reality to it that really clicks visually.
Seeing the actor do it makes you really believe that this character is doing it.
Exactly. And then adding the layers of practicality on top of that is just even better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big one-up I have to give to the movie.
And it just makes this guy look really cool.
Yeah.
Having the pro skateboarders come in and do all that stuff down the hill, and having
Well, I thought that was really funny through the film how like, and it's intentional how they have him look kind of dorky, a little bit hunched over, and all in like very gray kind of color palettes at the beginning of the movie, and then as he gets more traveled, you know, he's got more color, he wears more color, he's got a cooler outfit on, he's more grizzled and rugged looking, and he just looks hotter as a dude. I'm like, that's pretty funny that this guy's getting more and more rugged the more and more he travels.
Especially because the whole thing with his love interest is like, you feel like he thinks he's not cool enough for this girl, and then you turn out him going and doing all this stuff isn't changing. She likes him as that boring office guy, right?
That really ties in to an interesting story plot, if you think about it, because at the heart of the movie, it really just wants you to believe this is a love story, because it's literally starts
the
with
first
him,
scene is the wink scene, right?
Yeah, on eHarmony, you know, so it sets up this whole plot to be just a love story about how he's fawning over this one woman at his work, and he can't talk to her, and then he thinks that the way to talk to her is by doing the been there done that segment on their eHarmony thing that one Todd character keeps telling him. It's like, oh, you gotta get cooler stuff on here, man, you know. But then through the process of his story, he just does stuff, and it starts to fill out regardless of what he's doing it for. He's no longer doing it for just a woman. He's actually doing it.
He's not doing any of this for his dating profile. It's a nuisance that this guy's calling him, trying to get all this stuff for his profile.
Yeah.
He's just trying to get the photograph, and is completely oblivious to the fact that he's running through Iceland and basically living these fantasies that he's been having.
And he gets that phone call from Todd, and he's like, yo, no one really is interested. You went to Phoenix. And he's like, oh, well, I just jumped out of a helicopter into the ocean in Iceland yesterday. And he's like, oh, that's funny, dude. And he's like,
no, I really did.
Yeah. It sets up the whole thing to be a love story, and then transforms into a film about dreams and following your dreams, and then achieving those dreams and fulfillment as someone who wasn't fulfilled to begin with. I think it's quite beautiful. It's like a feel-good movie. Well done.
They do a really good job building his world too, where he became the man of the house at a young age. You know, he immediately started working. It's just been all work. Now he's taking care of his mom, getting her mom moved in. He's also doing 1, 2, 3. He's a busy guy. And then all of a sudden he just like drops everything and flies for work while all this stuff's going on, just kind of leaving it to everyone else. It's cool to just see a guy that you can tell had big dreams and big aspirations as a kid. He wanted to be a skateboarder. He wanted to travel the world. He wanted to do all this stuff and never did.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's just so quick to go and do this stuff, and isn't sitting there until he's not enjoying the moment until the scene where the two of them are sitting together. He's like, sometimes you just need to sit and just watch. Sometimes I don't take the photo because it's distracting. And that's when it kind of, there's that subtle little scene where it clicks in his head.
I love that scene. That was so nice to see. I've never really watched any movies that really teaches that to people. And then it makes you reflect on the whole fact that his entire travel is just to find this guy for work, you know, and
well, you had the thing the whole time.
Yeah. Which is very cheesy writing, but it works with how grandiose the whole story worked.
And someone can get to that scene and be like, oh, well, this is stupid. All this, and it's just, we woke up and it was all a dream kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's not about him finding the photo. This whole movie, the whole story is about him becoming the person he wants to be in his dreams.
Yeah.
To the point where he's not really having the daydreams anymore. And they show you that he's the guy that gets something done. He's the guy, every single negative, they've never had a problem before. He works hard, and even Sean sees that, right? And Sean shouldn't even know this guy.
Right.
He's this guy that gets stuff done, so it's kind of fitting that his character would just be like, "Okay, I need this right now." So he does whatever he can. He goes immediately and gets a flight, and just leaves right then and then to go get that flight. Gets a rental car.
I guess money was never really an issue for this dude too, either, right? Because they don't really mention it, but they kind of hint at the fact this guy's just like a high roller. Asha has her hand up.
I do, because...
What do you need to say?
Well, when he's in, oh my gosh, what was it? Papa John's, he pulls out his little budgeting thing, right? He doesn't have 4,000 whatever that he needed for his mom's rent. So I was like, oh, dude is struggling with money. How is he affording these flights?
That was like...
Because he had like 3,500 or something. That's what he wrote down, like, after the drink.
Yeah, it's very weird though, because like when he couldn't get the piano into the apartment, he's just like, the guy who runs like the retirement complex or whatever is like, oh yeah, the next one's gonna be $4 something thousand, and it's like,
It's
okay.
like, yeah, okay.
He's like, yeah, do it. No problem. And then he books a flight to Greenland the next day. He's doing all this stuff. He's running around countries, like goes back to the States, goes to Afghanistan. Like, this guy can't be struggling with money. There's no way. There's
That's
no
why
way.
I was confused about the Papa John's scene. I was like, why is he like budgeting right now?
Yeah.
Like, why is he writing down the cost of his drink from Papa John's and then
It's a frugal man.
Well, and he also spent like $3,000 on the rental car in Greenland. Like, that was a thing they noted when he opens up his checkbook there. He's like, oh, rental car. It's like, yeah, this guy's loaded. There's no way this guy's not loaded. But then it always hinted at the checkbook, and it's like, is he supposed to be broke or is he supposed to be loaded? Like, I can't really tell.
I think they're just showing kind of his character is very to the books. He's very focused on doing everything right and getting everything down. That he probably has money. He's probably found it. He's just probably a frugal guy. He's keeping track of every little thing he does.
Yeah, well, I guess that would make sense clocking back to how he said that they were broke when his dad left or passed away. So, like, growing up, because he's been working ever since, I could imagine that he's, like, very penny pinching because he was broke as a kid.
And he was the main source of money probably for the family.
Yeah, but then he'll go across the world for one Polaroid.
Well, you need to get the story going somewhere, right?
Oh,
At one
yeah.
point where it's like you have to just look past it and just be like, yeah, it's a movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just a little negative.
I will say, I really admire Ben Stiller specifically while making this movie because you see the attention to detail in so much of it. Where, especially as you see it in Severance too, where his cinematography is so, especially in the beginning, because it was the whole point of how it looked. Because in the beginning, it was very symmetrical. Each shot was very very stylized and picked, and even just the set of like the life and all this wardrobe, I think, was very meticulous. And you see in some of the behind the scenes stuff how meticulous each little thing was that they picked out. But it's really cool to see how well they show everything and the progression of everything through the film. Even everything from his outfits to the way they shoot it all. You just see him go from this bland guy, very to the book, very straight kind of guy. You see that in his outfits, the wardrobe, the cinematography, it all follows that. And then when you break it to the daydreams, that's when the camera gets all handheld and shaky and crazy moves, and then right back into the static shot. When you get to the point in the movie where he's now doing these things and the movie starts following that style of the camera moves more fluidly, there's more handheld, there's more attached movement shots. That's when you start seeing all that kind of come into it. And then he's wearing more colorful clothing. You see him get a bit more disheveled and with straggly hair and the beard. He's not as clean as he was. It's really cool to see all the aspects so visibly throughout the whole movie that take you through that. And I think it's really cool how detailed it can be in just such a simple little way to tell a story.
The visual storytelling around him and his world as he goes through the story, so it as he changes, the world around him changes visually to match what he's been changing into. So, like, as he's coming out of the clean-cut kind of corporate world of New York, his colors start to turn into more vibrant colors, less grays and blacks and stuff, and then the world around him also then changes in colors from the grays and blacks of the city, and then goes into the colors, the greens, the blues of the world around you.
I do think his character progression was really well demonstrated throughout the film in like every single aspect too, not just like visually, but even with the storyline. Like, what's his name?
Todd for me.
Todd.
Harmony.
Like, oh my gosh, Todd was like perfect, right? Like, first time he's like, oh, there's nothing I could say for been there, done that. Second time he's opening up a bit. He's like, oh, I've been to Phoenix, whatever. Third time he's like, oh yeah, I just got attacked by a shark and like volcanoes erupting, blah blah blah. I don't know. It was really good. It was so obvious, like the intention behind what.
It just kind of, it was that thing to really point out where he was and how far he had come, right, from each phone call.
Yeah, it's like a very in-your-face way to track his progress as a character. They're kind of like little milestone marks for him that like clearly point out how he's changing.
Especially because so much of the film is daydreams, where sometimes you're like, wait, is this a daydream or is this it's actually it's cool just a reality check.
It's exposition. Good exposition, I think, is a good way of putting it. It's exposition to anchor you to the reality of what's happening because it's such an out of reality experience for this character.
It's like the titles and everything everywhere all at once
Yeah.
that tell you where we are in the story. It's the
That's really smart. I think I
Mm.
should use that in my own writing at some point. You ever realize in the film also how you were talking about how visually at the beginning of the film and when he's back, I guess, in New York all the time, he's kind of gray and the world is gray? You ever notice when he's with Cheryl, she's always in a very vibrant color, and the environments that you're around her in, like when they were in Central Park with her kid, very green, beautiful. She's dressed up in color, you know, the world around him is more colorful, even though he's still kind of gray.
Yeah.
I think that was a nice little touch to show a lot of his motivation as well,
Mhm.
in the fact that, like, she is light and color for him in this gray world.
Yeah.
And then while he goes through his experience gaining color through his travels, she's always there, colorful in New York, regardless. It also kind of shows that he didn't need to do all of that for her. Like, he did it for himself, where he felt like the more traveled and rugged he was, the more attractive he would be to her. But in the reality of it, he never needed to do any of that for her.
Yeah.
I also noticed that, like, there's that one scene where the big ups bring everyone together and they're like, oh, by the way, we're going to fire everyone. But it's such like a, I don't want to say a drab colored scene, you know? It's just like black and white. That's
Yeah.
it. And then one thing that stood out to me was both Walter and Cheryl's eyes are like, obviously they're blue, like just because they have blue eyes, whatever. But the way that they like colored it, their eyes were like
Very
so
blue.
blue. And it was like the only ounce of color in that shot. And I thought it was interesting.
In the behind the scenes, they have a lot of little things with the production designer about color as well. So it's kind of like they really emphasized the lack of color in their color palettes in the office. And they went to the extent of actually like modeling out their office set
Mhm.
to practice what colors they're going to need in certain scenes and like where they want their scenes to live, kind of thing. So it's definitely a super intentional thing that the eyes were very poppy, huge pop of color for scenes in the office. Because I kind of noticed that too. Like, his eyes were always very like deep blue, very bright.
Contrasted the neutral tones of the office.
I really do like the use of like Life magazine. That's like the core of the story.
Yeah.
That was really cool to like think about it and how they kept using Life's motto throughout the film. It was really cool just as that little story guide of what that motto actually meant to him and how, especially at the end with him being the quintessence of life and that the little photo essay of Sean at the end.
Do you think there's some kind of connection to the fact that this is a lifestyle story and the fact that Walter works at Life magazine?
Oh, I think that was very intentional.
It's kind of interesting if you think about what we just went into at the color thing. Like, Life magazine's office is all dead and colorless, and the only pops of color are their posters on the wall,
Yeah.
really. And then it's ironic that he's working at Life,
Mhm.
but there's no color for him there. But then when he
Yeah.
experiences Life, as in like he experiences where these photos that the magazine prints comes from originally,
Yeah.
it's like color and full and swelling music and, you know, grandiose mountain ranges. And it's like kind of ironic that he works at Life, but once he lives Life, he realizes what life was all about.
Yeah.
And then a nice little touch at how he was the last front cover of the magazine.
Mhm. Kind of like in that corporate, all that kind of stuff. They all worked together to make something that was like showing life, and they were the life of the magazine.
I think that's a really good point.
Well, that's why I love that he, of course, had to work at Life magazine because that's a perfect little wrap for that.
What did you think of the villains? Like, how do you think that Beard Guy, because I think that's his official name, is Beard Guy in the movie.
What is Adam Scott's character's name?
Ted Hendricks.
How do you feel that them being the villains of the story, do you think they motivated him enough? From like a story standpoint, you usually have that villain character that really challenges your main characters. I didn't feel like they were much of a challenge in terms of his actual story. I think, if anything, he pushed him more into it, which kind of breaks the mold of like your standard villain.
I feel like what motivated him was to like prove him wrong.
Hmm.
I kind of do feel like he was sort of a good villain though, because he kept pushing for the photo, which was motivating Walter to go and get the photo.
Right.
But it wasn't necessarily from a he was scared of him way. It was just he was so annoyed and didn't want to have to deal with this guy, rather than like a typical like I'm gonna kill you if you don't do this right now. Is more just like a I'm so annoyed with this guy.
I guess there's that fear of losing his job too, which I guess for the character would be a huge deal with this guy who's very job centered. So a lot of it may have been motivation for the wrong reasons, is what pushed Walter into it. And then he got to Sean finally to get the negative and realized he was doing it for the wrong reasons. And Sean taught him the lesson that he needed to learn, that it's for the moments you're living it, not for one reason or another. And I think Sean's little carefree monologue told Walter that it's like, you know what? Maybe it's not all about one thing. It's about the moments you get along the way that matter in the long run. So when he gets back to America, he seems to give less of a crap about it, because he's doing his resume. And instead of actually having his job experiences on the resume, like you typically would, he puts his life experiences on it. He climbed the mountain in Afghanistan and he jumped into, like, he puts those on his resume, which you wouldn't do, right? You'd put your experience. But I thought that was a nice tiny detail that they put in to show his character growth as well. That he lost his care for working along this journey and learned to live as a person.
Live his life.
Live his life.
We'll be right back.
Hello, listeners. It's Jackson's mom. I'm here to tell you about our Patreon. If you subscribe to our Patreon starting at $3 a month, you can unlock early access to videos and podcast episodes, be a part of live episodes, receive free monthly gifts, and hear full versions of our podcast with bits like this.
Asha looks like a little Yoda.
Fries eat you? Is that
Fries eat you?
You eat
Eat you fries?
Eat
Right.
Fries you eat? There we go.
Do fries exist in the Star Wars universe?
I don't know. I hope so.
That's my favorite Yoda line. Fries you eat?
I am your father. Father, am I? I don't know. I actually have only watched one Star Wars.
You've only watched one Star Wars?
Yeah.
Which one?
I don't know.
The Wars or the Star?
Both.
No.
Yikes.
Yikes.
So, subscribe to our Patreon today. The link is in the show notes. And now, back to the show.
All right, well, welcome back to Mixed Reviews.
I want at least Tom to give input about the foreshadowing because you've never seen this movie before and you were able to like literally predict
I can
the
get
end.
us into this. I think my favorite moment of us watching this was when, because you'd never seen it before, and Asha and I have.
No.
My favorite part was you totally guessing that he was going to be the cover at the end.
I mean, I guessed a different cover.
That's true.
See, I was assuming he'll find Sean, and Sean will take his photo after having been through all that he's been through, and then the cover would be that photo. I wasn't expecting it to be a photo of him at work doing his thing. However, the fact that I still guessed that it would be him was sheerly because of the fact that this was such a predictable movie. It's like, it's that big revealing moment where it's like, oh yeah, like, you are important. Your life does matter. Like, this is you, and you're perfect the way you are. That's like these movies always have that kind of theme and that lesson. And that was just kind of the way this movie was clearly leading up to the fact that it was going to be the moment Walter recognized he was acknowledged in the world.
Can I give a different perspective? I feel like, yeah, somewhat predictable, but like there's also really, really well hidden, but like very obvious foreshadowing throughout the movie. Like, not directly, it's not like the storyline or whatever, but little Easter eggs per se. Like when he's walking by all the Life magazines, there's that photo of it's a bunch of like Life magazine covers, and there's the last one he passes is him in an astronaut suit. So that's already like hinting at the fact, oh, look, he's already on a magazine cover there. Also, it does say like making the bravest man in the world, which I was like, period, love that. And then also when, photographer dude has a picture of the piano it hints that he's been there before. I don't know. I think it was a really good lead up, not necessarily just because of the type of story, but also because there's like some really clever foreshadowing.
It also hints back to one of the first things Cheryl says to him is, "Oh, well, I'm in this mystery writing class, and like everything finally connects in the end, right? It's all
Yeah.
these little things that seem random,
Yeah.
and then finally they come back and they all connect in the end, right?"
Yeah. 100%, there's two ways you could perceive those things. And I guess the way I've perceived this outcome is more so because of the genre that this movie sits in. And those little moments of foreshadowing, like what you said about how he's already been on a cover, like that totally went over my head. Didn't recognize the fact that Walter Mitty was on any of these covers already.
I think that was just a daydream thing.
I don't think so. Well, I think that was like just not, I don't even think it was him daydreaming. I think it was just there as like a if you catch it, you catch it type moment. Like in the storyline in that universe, he had already been on a cover. I think it was more like placed there to kind of literally hint at the fact that it would be him on it. Because he didn't even pay attention to it. He didn't look past it. The rest of the life covers were regular.
This is totally in the wheelhouse that this movie wanted their audience to be like, yeah, I knew it. It was going to be Walter this whole time, like predictable.
It's like my mom would always say, "Oh, I should write one of these every time mom guesses something."
It just sets it up so perfectly for you to guess it, and I think it does it on purpose. Still love the film and how they get there, though, and how the nods to the fact that it was going to be Sean, like as you said with the piano photo. That was a good clue to the fact that Sean's been around New York, right? Like that photo was taken by his mother. At that point, it opens the doors to you to say that Sean has been around Walter Mitty without him knowing. Sean clearly knows his mother, so at that point, it's very clear that it's like, oh, maybe that last image is going to be Walter.
It's that murder mystery.
Yeah.
Reverse.
And that's the final clue that Cheryl ends up talking about, right? Like that's the final thing that clicks it all together. And I think that's the moment where the audience is meant to get it.
Another thing that actually I really like the first time I saw this movie, and still I really do love about this movie, is the use of like practical text.
Oh, like how the text message goes into the mountain.
Right? And in the back of the plane and on the runway.
Honestly, whenever I see it in a movie, I love it though. And this movie was like one of the first I ever saw to do that. And I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. And it made me want to do it in my stuff. And maybe like that's one of the things I really do love about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's also such a brilliant way to tie in like the daydreaming stuff, is like the titles are like there kind of like they would be if he would imagining something, right? When he's writing in his journal, like it's like he's thinking, and it's there to tell the story, but also fill in with his, like, it fits really well into integrating the film into the world and his daydreaming into the world.
Yeah, and his mind too. It's a good way of expanding how he thinks, like specifically that whole sequence when he's climbing the mountain and his journal is just reading what he's doing, but it's not just like point by point, it's how he writes it, and I unfortunately
I am alone.
Yeah, it's how he feels in the moments, which it has power to it, and I can't remember many instances where text messages were a thing, but it didn't do the little text bubble above the phone like you see in a lot of movies, which I personally really, really don't like. Instead, it had that text message up on the side of a mountain while the plane
did it. Oh, that little transition is amazing.
When I saw that, I was like, okay, this movie is using what otherwise would be like a pretty corny way to get from one place to another. It's just like a text message bubble, but it takes it in such this massive scale by throwing it up on the side of a mountain as a Boeing 737 or whatever it was flies back and takes you into the
just a
JFK airport.
Like, a whip pan into New York.
I'm like, yeah, okay, that was an amazing way to get back to New York so easily. Like you said in your words, no travel montage, no this, no that. It was just one cut into one scene into another with like the plane that takes you there.
Yeah, one single thing. This movie does have a lot of really cool transitions. One thing I've always loved and had to work into my own stuff is using like a little frame wipe to change your shot.
Mm-hmm.
And even just the sleight of to punch in. there's a lot of really cool walk and talks where they have like so much stuff cross in the frame, but you use that frame cross as a way to then cut, where you cut to a different angle. But specifically, I like I just said, I love when you use it to push in, and you have that impact of this conversation getting more important or getting really interesting for the main character when you push in instead of just cutting to it or jump cutting a push in. You have the nice little frame wipe to transition you into it. It makes me feel a little nice and warm inside.
Yeah.
So this movie just has pretty great little practical slash VFX things in it that just make it pretty seamless that I really love about it.
It's using very simple techniques, very reliable techniques, and just leaning into them. Like there's no overly fancy camera work. There's no overly fancy VFX work except for like those ridiculous daydream sequences.
Yeah.
It takes like pretty classic techniques used in filmmaking for generations and uses them just as they're designed to be used to get you from one shot to another without you noticing. A lot of my favorite shots were all the practical grip rigged truck shots of him like driving down the hills and stuff. Like those aren't VFX, those aren't fancy. Like it's just a truck with a camera on it leading your actor going to, and it's just basic, pretty simple filmmaking on a larger scale that just keeps you in the moments rather than
and keeps the grips
building
doing
it.
a lot of work.
Oh, I could imagine those grips having to rig that truck.
But what about the advertising? Was eHarmony an advertisement? Was Papa John's an advertisement? What about
Most of the time I
Cinnabon?
find that usually is just they use this product in the movie, so they have to pay the company to use their.
It's very strange. Sometimes like they'll approach a company because it's part of the story. Like the whole Papa John's, him working at Papa John's thing, I think was written into the script. So they would have approached Papa John's and been like, hey, this is part of our script. How much do we have to pay you to use your merchandising and your branding in the film? But then other things like if like Coca-Cola's in a movie or something, like Coca-Cola would pay to have these actors drinking Coca-Cola rather than Pepsi. Like
But didn't the Cinnabon seem like a big ad to anyone else? Like heroin on a plate, please.
that
That has to be an ad, right?
could have been. It's difficult to tell. I wonder if Cinnabon approached him and was like, hey, we'll give you this much money if your characters eat Cinnabon in the airport, and he says heroin on a plate. Or it could have been Patton Oswalt and Ben Stiller one day in like a script read, and Patton Oswalt or Ben Stiller could have been like, hey, how funny would it be if we had them eat Cinnabon and said it was heroin on a plate, you know? Like, being my first time watching this movie, I can see why you love it so much. It's so extraordinarily you. And I can totally see how it's one of your favorite movies. It's like very beautiful. It's a lovely story, which
Makes me love Iceland.
it kind of inspired me to want to travel a bit more. I just need to get some money.
You're not as rich as.
I don't have a checkbook to balance. That's how poor I am.
I love this movie, and I think it will forever be one of my favorites, and forever probably will be somewhere in Aj's top 5.
It's beautiful. Well, I did have to do a review of it for one of my classes last year. Jax, I'm sure you remember the class. It was Outdoor Adventure on Screen, English department's version of film. But we did have to watch that, and it was like the 5th time I've watched it. I love it. I love it. It's so beautifully executed.
All right, I think that's a good little time to stop for now.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. That's a thumbs up on my review. I don't know. All right. Well, we will see you next time. I'm not
Next
gonna say
time.
next. I don't know. Whenever.
When we have more time to make more podcasts, we'll see you.
We're working. We're busy people. We're working in the industry, trying to learn more.
Maybe when our next project that we just got off of is released, maybe we could do a podcast on it.
I was planning on it.
That'd be cool.
That'll be. I think it's gonna be a good movie, but
It looks like it will be.
If you guys do that, please let me in.
Sure.
Thanks.
well, I mean, the plan is that you're here for the rest of them.
Yeah. But like that one,
That one you really want.
my history major would come out probably. Except I might be like criticizing it. Or maybe not. I don't know. I've never seen it. It's a secret from me, guys. I didn't work on this show because I don't work in the film industry. I work at No Frills.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah. Hey, what was the plane that Sean rode in on when he was in Iceland? Was it a Bye, plane.
Can't go stealing their stuff. Come on.
Lame.
That was pretty funny though.
Bye.
Hey there, I'm Jackson's mom, and this has been Mixed Reviews with Tom McMahon, Jackson Brotherton, and our in-host genius, Asha Joseph. This episode was mixed, mastered, and edited by TheOldManDave. Be sure to follow our podcast on your favorite podcast app and join our Patreon for extended, ad-free, and bonus episodes. The link is in the show notes. This has been a Vanish Entertainment production. Thank you for listening.